Good evening. My name is Jay Rothman, and welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Raw. It is an unusual evening. It's Thursday, and usually I broadcast the show live on Fridays, either at 6 or 7. But I have a special guest on this evening who had a conflict for tomorrow night, and so we decided to go live this evening. I would suggest, first of all, thank you, welcome for joining the show. I'm going to spend a few moments here just pushing this out to my other pages. Welcome to those of you that have joined us live, and give me a moment here while I push this out to my other pages. While I'm doing that, I would like to invite you to buckle your seatbelt. This is going to be a fast-moving show. What's going to happen is I'm going to invite our guest to come on. His name is Duane Orlando Hill. I would like to introduce him, share a little bit about how we met 2.5 years ago. So we're going to go back to the time when we met, and then I'm going to invite Duane to go further back at the beginning of his healing journey and decisions he had to make. And then we're going to fast forward. We're going to come back to the future or right now. And so I'd like to thank you for joining us. If you are not live, you will be able to catch the replay. Thank you for catching us either way and for joining our show this evening. I am about to introduce Duane Orlando Hill. Give me one more second here while I get this out. Technology is, unfortunately, it doesn't just happen. We still have to do some manual work. And I've got one more page, and then we're going to get this show going. All right, I think we got all of our pages lit up. I believe we're good to go. So without further ado, I have had a week of tremendous anticipation and excitement. The anticipation part for me is unusual because I work really hard at just living in a moment and not future tripping. So for me to spend the last week anticipating, excited to have tonight's show is somewhat unusual for me. But I am excited to have Duane on the show, and I'm going to bring him on. Good evening, Duane. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Raw.
Yes, good evening. How you doing, Jay? Thanks for having me.
It's so good to see you. It's we've been conversing now. We met about 2.5 years ago. Duane originally is from, I believe, the islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and when we met, I was on a semi-business trip, piggyback to go down to Florida, and at the time didn't realize that it would be the last time I'd see my own dad alive. On that trip, I was asked by a client to come into the islands and survey some projects for him, some restaurants that needed to be redesigned. And so I piggybacked the trip, and on one of my days there, during a break, I walked into a restaurant that Duane happened to be managing at the time, working at, and he was our server. And I don't recall exactly how the conversation went from just placing the order to sharing some of what was going on in my life and where I was. I was less than, I think, 2 months. It was January of 16, and I had just had all of my surgeries back in October. So it was just a few months later. I probably had no business being on that airplane. Probably was not the right thing to do, but I got there, and I think that's exactly how it was supposed to happen. And so we met, and during our conversation as he was serving me, in that moment, I just knew that I needed to have further conversations with Duane. Something inside me told me that this was a man that I needed to get to know. And so I asked him, I just put the invite out there for myself, and I said, would you be willing to talk to me when you're not working on your off time? because I just felt he had some answers for me in my own, I'd say my own recovery healing journey. And so he shared his personal phone number. A day or two later, we did connect. We did meet for, I believe, 2 or 3 hours. And I sat there, I asked him, I remember I was so overwhelmed with so many answers he gave me. I asked him if I could just take some notes. And I opened up those notes quite often after I left the islands and referred to them. And then I put them away, and I hadn't looked at them for a solid year, maybe. And I just reopened them about a week or two ago. When I looked at them, I was like, that's all I got? Like, I thought I had so much more in there. Because in that moment, I guess that's what I needed to hear is what I wrote. And I couldn't keep up with Duane. And so I came back to the States, to the mainland, and we kept in touch over the year and a half or two. And mostly through messenger, through texting, occasionally by phone. And at some point, Duane was living in St. Thomas during a really bad hurricane last year. And I'm going to let him take over the story from here and share some of that. But, you know, he's one of these men that touched my life the moment I met him. And I knew in that second that he was one of these people that was going to be in my life for a very long time. I knew that he had gone through some significant decisions that he had to make regarding his own diagnosis and how he chose to navigate through his own process is really what this story is about tonight. And so without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Duane and let you kind of start to share your story.
Thanks, Jay. Really appreciate the intro. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to share my story. Kind of took me a little off guard, but you know, I guess it is worth sharing. You know, some of the things that I've been able to experience. Like you said, you know, a couple of years ago, we met in St. Thomas. I think it was maybe about a year and a half before we met. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and I think we've talked about this before. And initially, I was not shocked, but it just kind of stunned me a little bit, you know. But it wasn't negative. It was more like, okay, what is this about? What is this about? What do I need to understand? Like, so, you know, for the listening audience, I mean, fortunately, I have had a process of spiritual, you know, growth and spiritual process and progress in my life prior to having this diagnosis. So I think that because of that is why I embraced it the way I did. Meaning, I shared it with, you know, immediate family because I thought that that was the appropriate thing to do. But then I knew that at some point I would have to decide how I was going to address this diagnosis. And you know, a number of things went through my mind. Even to this day, it still goes through my mind whether the diagnosis was an accurate diagnosis or not. You know, I've become very skeptical about, you know, the medical profession, government, you know, pretty much on a whole, and its agencies. So basically, when I was diagnosed, one of the things I wanted to give myself a chance to think about was an alternative to the conventional medical way, or the conventional way of addressing cancer, which we typically know would be, you know, some form of radiation, chemotherapy, or even surgery. I wanted to see if I can find an alternative. an alternative choice to addressing the situation. And because of my spiritual walk prior to this diagnosis, I think that was a fairly easy transition for me. And perhaps that's why I wasn't really panicking at the time. Uh, so that's basically what I did. You know, I had made up my, it didn't take long for me to make up my mind whether I was going to take an alternative route. But what I wanted to do was to give my family the satisfaction that I actually would take in consideration even speaking or having consultation with medical doctors. So I became a patient at Johns Hopkins for a couple of weeks for consultation um, and you know, just an overview of what could transpire in terms of uh, the conventional way. Well, you know, like I said, you know, I had grown in my spiritual walk enough to kind of recognize certain things. So when the doctor sat with me, you know, I didn't feel that personal touch, you know. I felt, you know, I've been in food and beverage, so I kind of understand what numbers are. You know, you have a customer that sits down, and you know, yeah, your job is to make them comfortable and have a good, you know, dining experience. But at the end of the day, it's just a number because that's what we're doing to get paid. And that's what I felt from this doctor. I mean, he didn't know me. You know, we had just met. He had got my paperwork a couple of weeks prior to my pathology report. He didn't even read it. You know, he confessed that while we were actually sitting down with consultation, that he didn't even have a chance to, you know, read the pathology report. But yet his nurse, as well as him, is, you know, recommending treatment. You know, so I asked some basic questions. I also asked if there was some alternative procedures, alternative ways that Johns Hopkins may be exploring, because I had heard that Johns Hopkins may have been exploring in some alternative treatment for cancer. But you know, all my questions was pretty much negative. There was only you know, what they were offering: chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. He recommended me a book to read, you know. So after a couple of weeks, you know, I decided, you know what? I had heard about, you know, alternative medicine. I've heard that people had gotten healed. I had heard people had gotten good results from alternative ways of treating and addressing cancer. I had one personal person that I met who was on stage 4 of prostate cancer. I mean, just, you know, they gave him up to die. But his son came in and took him to a holistic practitioner, got him on, you know, raw diet, vegan, and the man's still alive to this day. You know, he's alive to this day.
Mm.
So I had some you know, my dad had prostate cancer, but you know, he took the conventional way. Um, I've had cancer in my family. You know, they all took the conventional way. I've had, you know, uncles who have died from prostate cancer. You know, so you know, there were some things I needed to consider, and I considered them. And so when I decided to take the alternative route, which is basically just, I felt that if I could learn what my body needed, if I can learn why my body was reacting, why my cells were mutating the way they were, if I could find out what was needed naturally to give my body a chance, to give my body a chance to heal itself, I'm going to find out. And that's what I did. For a couple of months, um, I just sat in my sister's apartment and just Googled, talked to people, spoke to doctors. And let me tell you, when I talk about alternative, I meant anything that came across my attention span. So it was from juicing to medical marijuana, to what I call earthing, or what's called earthing. I did that, walking in the sand. I mean, I looked at every possible thing that can give my body at least a fighting chance. One of the good things about my situation was, my circumstance was that I caught it early. I caught it very early. Uh, and the reason why I caught it early is because I'm ex-military, and I was on high blood pressure, hypertensive medication for about 6 or 7 years. But in order to get that medication, you had to take, your blood work every 3 months, and that it was through the blood work my PSA count started to spike. So that's how we caught it early.
How high
Well,
was your PSA level when you were at Johns Hopkins? And at that point, you were.
I think at that point it was maybe about 8 or 9. Uh,
And what's the highest it climbed? How high did you get?
I think about 12. And right now it's back down to 4. But so, I mean, I really did a lot of research. I was very, I weighed everything that I could possibly weigh, pros and cons, and I was determined. I was willing to do whatever it took to give my body a fighting chance. And
why do you think at that moment, when you made the conscious decision to opt out and leave Johns Hopkins, what was really behind that for you? Was it that I heard what you said, that you just felt like the doctor walked into the room, he hadn't even taken the time to review your case before he walked in and met you, and but beyond that fact, there's plenty of other oncologists you could have gone to for second opinions. You could have gone to you could have explored other doctors where you felt connection. But what was it in that moment that had you feel that you could heal yourself as opposed to going with a traditional Western route?
Well, like I said, and that's a great question. I had been on my spiritual journey for a while, so I had come to some understandings. And so perhaps that's why it didn't take me very long to kind of assess the situation, and really felt deeply that this circumstances wasn't it wasn't a death call. It wasn't something for me to panic about. It was part of my journey about learning who I am. It's part of my purpose for being here. So I did not look at the diagnosis as terminal. I was determined to live, and the alternative, the Western medicine, really, there was a high degree of the quality of your life would decrease. And with natural holistic approach, I couldn't well reasonably say the same. If anything, I would get the results that I was looking for without the side effects of that you would get with Western medicine. I mean, that's when it really came down to for me about it was a win-win situation. I did not see my diagnosis as something to die from. I felt that it could be controlled if I took a holistic route.
So when you made that final decision, and you shared on the show tonight that you primarily had a sense before you went to Hopkins that you were leaning towards a holistic route. And as you shared on the show, and you shared this with me in the past, part of the reason you went there, the intention was to get it more information, to be more knowledgeable and understanding what that option really entailed, but also to appease your family members. When you made the decision to exit stage left out of Johns Hopkins and fly home to your home, to allow your body to heal and go through that process, which I'm excited to hear you share. How did your family respond to that? And how did you navigate through those difficult conversations? Because I can only imagine your family members weren't coming from any place other than two places: love for you and fear. They probably thought on some level you had lost your mind. And if they didn't express it, they probably were feeling it. And so I'm going to turn it back over to you. Like, how did you navigate through that moment when you had to break the news to your family? Like, I'm out of here. This is not the plan that I'm willing to accept.
That's another great question. Funny thing though, my family, it's so used to me making some crazy decisions.
Well, but to you, they're not crazy. So that's their perspective.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Sound hard.
In other words, I don't think that choice that I made to take the alternative route was very surprising. I really don't think it was very surprising at all. And so, I got a lot of support because I've always been very strong-willed individual. And if once I set my mind to something, I pretty much do my best to accomplish it. So I did come back home because I recognized that a lot of the things I needed were right in my backyard. I was born and raised in the Virgin Islands in St. Thomas, and so I took 6 months off of work. And fortunately, the family house was there. I stayed with my mom, so she was a great help. But seriously, from the time I got back, I set my mind. I knew what the research was telling me, and I knew what I needed to do. So the first thing I knew I needed to do was to cleanse my blood. I needed to flush my system. I needed to detoxify. I understood that my system was not running at its optimum, and so it needed an overhaul. It needed a serious tune-up. A lot of these non-infectious diseases, that's what it really comes right down to. We need a really good overhaul on our system. Unfortunately, what Western medicine do to address that, they put synthetic and artificial remedies. They act as nature would act, so to speak, versus the person actually doing the work of drinking water, eating right, getting exercise. What these synthetic and artificial products do is kind of substitute an individual from actually doing the work that they're supposed to be doing. So it takes the place of God, basically, or takes the place of nature, or what nature is supposed to be doing. So I knew I needed plenty of water. I needed plenty of rest. I knew I needed plenty of healthy mental stimulation. I needed to deal with my emotions. I needed to feed my body nutrients and minerals. All this stuff about, carbohydrates and proteins, to me, that's just a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo. We need our bodies are electric, and everything that is sparked in terms of life and the evolution of life is all chemical, and it's all electric. And water is that, conductor, that soluble fluid that triggers all of these chemical reactions in our bodies. And so we need clean blood. We need a detox. I knew that. And so I went on an immediate fast of no food for 30 to 45 days. I can't remember. But during that time, I was getting the looks, I think a lot of people thought that I was so sick because I think I lost like 40 or 50 pounds. But after the end of the fast, I looked amazing. So they could not naysay. It's like, yeah, I lost the weight, but you know, my skin was clear. I mean, it was just because I was eating a lot of greens. You know, so I was juicing. I would, for the 30 or 45 days, I drink 2 gallons of water every day, and I would really try to drink spring water or mineral water. Natural spring water is the best water to have, because it has all the nutrients and minerals that nature puts in that water for our bodies. So I made sure that I was drinking alkaline water, or I think that there's a geyser crystal geyser. That's probably the best water. That's what I was drinking. Uh, I was juicing greens. I do kale, green apple, ginger mixture every 3 to 5 days. I would do 4 quarts of that. I would make my own chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is important because it's almost like a blood cleanser, and it neutralizes, not neutralizes it, but it nutrient puts the nutrients back into your blood. So anything green, I mean, green is nature. If you find anything green, a lot of the stuff, you know, it's so funny. You know, you're so helping me, Jay, because this has been like almost 3 years ago that I've done this, and one of the challenging things in addressing cancer this way is that you really don't know how long it will take effect. You don't. And so this is what I would want to impart in this juncture of this interview, is that I did not go into this trying to cure my cancer. Mm-mm. I was fine living with it as long as it didn't mess me up, you know. And I think that what people are trying to do, they're trying to cure something that may not really need curing. We as individuals, it should be a signpost. It should be it should be represented that I have to make some changes in my lifestyle. Because looking for a cure won't change your lifestyle. And what we really need is to heal. That's what we really need. This is my message. If I have a message, would be that this was life-changing for me. Even during this process in the last couple of years where we kept in touch, but now we've kind of come full circle, and you've really prompted me to speak out a little bit more, as well as for me to reapply. Because one of the challenges is to be able to have this as a lifestyle, and that's challenging. And I think that this is why I think your work and your networking is important. We need a network of people we can encourage each other, support each other in our process of healing. Jay, you know. So my healing is still ongoing. Yes, I've reduced my PSA. Yes, I've shrunk my tumor, so forth and so on. But I have so much more to do. I have so much more to do, and this has really helped me to get back where I need to be. So, say for instance, like you know, they say in the Christian church, I've backslidden. Well, one of the things about this journey and this life is learning as you're going, and recognizing the signposts, recognizing when you know your attention is trying to be get caught up into a direction that you're supposed to be going. And you kept in touch with me. I mean, you kept in touch with me. You would send me your videos and stuff. Unfortunately, like a year ago, a hurricane came through. Two Category 5s came through St. Thomas, and man, it just completely devastated the place. So, man, this past year for me has been crazy. Being displaced for so many months, had to find, fly out, had to find, new place to live. And so, yeah, you don't get to practice the healthy things that that you should be doing and so forth. Um, but this is definitely an opportunity for me to get back into it, Jay, and I really appreciate you giving me that opportunity to do that.
So I'm going to give you a moment to just take a deep breath because you've been going at this for a while now, and I want to do a few things. First, I want to absolutely acknowledge and thank you, Duane, because I know that my impression is that you are a relatively private man, and for you, it was suggested that I invite you on the show. And my first response was, there's no way Duane Hill is going to accept coming on. And once again, my best thinking, which is the stories that I make up in my own head sometimes, I'd say that I'm off about at least 50% of the time. And then I run with these stories and they're false. And the truth is that you accepted to come on with great reservation and hesitation because it's not every day that you come on a live broadcast. And so it has been such a beautiful experience to go through the last couple of weeks since I asked you to come on and for us to really kind of catch up on a lot of things. So I thank you so much for being courageous to come on and share your story. However, I will tell you this. When I met you, you were the first person and maybe the only person that really truly gave me authentic hope that I didn't have to rely on Western medicine to heal my own self, my mind, my body, and my soul. Because when we met, I was an absolutely bankrupt man. You met me very, very early on, and I had no answers, I had no solutions, and I was one doorstep away from dying with a different diagnosis, but one still the same that had nearly taken me out twice. And the only solutions that my medical team had for me was just to put the Band-Aid on, just to give me some relief for the symptom. But they didn't have any direction, any solutions, any prescriptions for how to heal my body. All they gave me were prescriptions on how to maintain the synthetic parts that they installed into my body, both of my legs and for my heart. And I even asked I think it was my cardiologist, I said, are you going to write me a prescription to see a nutritionist? And his answer was, you don't need to see a nutritionist, just follow the Mediterranean diet. And I was like, I walked out of it, and now this guy is one of the top cardiologists in the world. He's just not a local cardiologist. I mean, he's one of the top, respected. And that was his best answer for me. You don't need a nutritionist. You just need to follow Mediterranean. And it just didn't feel right. Just like when you met with your oncologist at Johns Hopkins, It just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And you were the first and truly only man that I have met over my last 33 months of initially recovery and then transitioning into healing that gave me hope. I looked at you and I said, if this guy can have the courage to take back his life and do whatever it took to heal, then I can do it.
Yeah.
Because I looked at you and I was like, you know what? My diagnosis isn't as bad as yours. Now that may have been me minimizing how how deathly ill I had become. But the reality is, it doesn't matter. What matters is that I believe that I had no business being in St. Thomas at that time. That was divine. That was a divine moment that I believe the divine put you in my life. And the key was that, as you mentioned, I didn't let you go. I didn't let you go. No matter what you were going through over the past 33 months, and I know you've gone through a lot, I was not willing to let you go out of my life because I knew that I needed you. And the beautiful thing is, what I didn't know, is that light's got to go down there. Thank you so much. What I didn't know was that somehow I was also fueling you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I had no idea. I had no idea that until you and I had a very vulnerable, authentic conversation. It wasn't just a couple of weeks ago. We had a really great call. I was actually in Sedona, of all places, one of the most beautiful environments that we could be. And there I was, literally sitting out on a balcony overlooking one of the most majestic mountains, probably in the United States. And we had this amazing, beautiful conversation. And you shared with me, how I have actually given you some inspiration as well.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the gift of, when all we have to do is just be willing to just show up in each other's life and recognize people that are good for you, people that are healthy and can bring you value, and knowing when to let go of those people that are toxic and are hurtful and are causing you damage and pain. And to be able to recognize what you need to do to stay committed, to get well, to get healed. And so I thank you. I know that for as long as I am alive and I get one more day, that you are clearly were placed in my life for a very specific reason. And I credit your courage with giving me the courage to respect Western medicine and use Western medicine in the ways that are important to me, which is testing. And I do utilize the skills of Western medicine and the equipment to monitor my progress in my healing process. But it's also a choice to continue with Western medicine treatment or not. And I've recently, as I blogged in the last couple of weeks, I was faced with the reality that the synthetic bypass that they put in for my leg 33 months ago has 100% occluded sometime between November of 17 and today. I have no blood flow passing through my bypass.
Wow.
It's there, but it's done. And what I didn't know in that moment, because when I got that word, I went right into fear and panic, and I saw myself laying on the operating table, and I saw them making new incisions, and I kind of played that whole thing out as it had unfolded 33 months ago. And then that lasted for a couple of minutes, and then I went from that fear to, wait a minute, what's really going on here? Because they were able to determine that I still had a blood pressure in my right leg. It was compromised. It's not in what's called the healthy normal range. It's at 70% rather than 100, but it should have been at 0 because I had no blood flow technically coming through my leg. And what the doctor said to me was, "You are a very strong man." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And he goes, "Somehow you have created a whole new collateral freeway of flow. You have naturally built a new system for your blood to flow down to your ankles. So we have a blood pressure. And you are a very remarkable and strong man." And he said, what is it that you've been doing? And what I didn't say to him was that I kept in touch with Duane Hill. Because he would have wanted to know who you were, and he wouldn't have believed your story anyway, probably.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
But you have been brought into my life, and I love you I absolutely love you, and I have tremendous respect that you had the courage, even without the support of your family members. And you haven't even mentioned you've got two daughters, two absolutely beautiful daughters. And I don't know how they responded or reacted, but I'm going to invite you to maybe just touch on that for a few moments.
Well, um, I've always encouraged my two girls. They're 22 and 17. And I've always encouraged them that if you have a problem, figure it out and find a solution. I've shared that with them since they were young girls, and now they're grown. And so this was again just another challenge. They've seen their father go through some challenges in his life, and did quite well in overcoming them. Uh, but I've also told them that this doesn't stop. You know, you're always going to be faced with challenges, and these challenges are supposed to do one thing, and that is to bring the best out of you. That's what it's supposed to be doing. So uh, I just decided. I dug my heels in, uh, and it's so funny you were sharing your story about uh, how your own personal journey, and you're coming through this decision through meeting me and my encouragement, and you actually seeing the results. Uh, this is these are principles that can be applied to our physical health. It can be applied to our relationships. It can be applied to pretty much anything that comes around in our life. And I think that this is what makes me comfortable doing what I do, because it's really based on a set of principles that I recognize that are as natural as falling asleep and waking up. If we begin to recognize these principles and these patterns that nature has strewn all over the place for us to observe, once we put those things into practice, like you've done, we can see the results. If we can apply that to our mental health, we can apply that to our emotional health, we can apply it to our spiritual health. Speaking of that, I would not want to miss this opportunity. Um, I do have a mentor. His name is Dr. Lonnie Hudspeth, PhD. He's a professor at the University of the Virgin Islands down in St. Thomas. We met about 10 or 12 years ago, and he's been my mentor. His latest book is called The Digel, and that is the divine intelligence governing everyday life. The Digel. I recommend folks get it. It's a powerful, powerful book that has helped me, along with his mentoring, become the type of person that I'm a benefit to myself and to others when need be. Um, in the world that we live in today, if we're not really looking inward, if we're not really being serious about our health, if we're not really serious about our family, if we're not really serious about our relationships, then we're gonna give all those responsibilities up to the government agencies, private people, people who are just really capitalists and just really wants your money, you know. And it will really rob you of your own personal joy being here on this planet. And I didn't want cancer to rob me of my joy of being a human being. And I basically was saying, no, I'm bigger than this. We are all bigger than this. Uh, and like I said earlier, if I don't mind living with it as long as it doesn't mess with me. And I have the
I'm going to
tools.
interject right there, Duane, because you just said something so powerful. When we have a doctor's appointment after testing and we get a diagnosis of a disease of any kind, whether it be cancer or any other disease, autoimmune, any other disease, there's always a prognosis behind it. And then we take it in hook, line, and sinker, and that becomes our identity. That becomes who
Mhm.
we are. And once we buy into that nonsense, it owns us. It
Yeah,
robs us.
yeah,
It eventually takes us. It takes us either physically or it takes us emotionally, mentally, and a lot of times spiritually. And that's a choice. We don't have to accept. We can accept the diagnosis, but we don't have to accept the prognosis.
that's right.
Prognosis is the death sentence.
That's right. Yep, it is. It is. I firmly understand, based on my own personal experience, nature has provided everything we need to heal. We may not be cured because curing is basically isolating something within you that's at disease. And we can do that through healing, but it makes no sense to not heal. Uh, Actually, you're really doing a disservice to yourself if you're not looking to heal. If you're just really looking for a cure, fine. There's nothing really I could do about that. But you will endure a lot of pain doing that. You know, there's an alternative. The alternative is to become healthy, holistic in your approach to your disease, recognizing that this is a conscious awakening of who you are. This is a conscious awakening of your purpose being here. Uh, it's to just reduce the diagnosis as an identity is really reducing your life, and you should never ever do that. Don't do that. Everybody's life is precious and it's unique, and it ought to be preserved as long as it can. But in a healthy quality of life manner. Uh, I mean, I do not. I repeat, I do not regret the route I took because I'm okay. I'm healthy. I'm not at dis-ease. I'm not sick. I'm not sickly. As a matter of fact, I had done so well the first year and a half during my journey of fasting and giving my body all it needs to heal, that my blood pressure dropped so dramatically. I have not been on hypertensive medication since 3 years now. So it does have its plus. It's really about really understanding how our body is supposed to work. If you ask a mechanic, a professional mechanic, how does the engine work, they should be able to break it down and give you all that you need to make that engine run properly. So it's the same thing with us. We give up way too much power and authority to those so-called doctors that are not really doing anything for us but making us more ill. You know.
I'd like to share this couple of thoughts, and I I echo. I feel the same. I have the same belief system that you do, and I do have respect for the medical community. And I think that there are some things that they do real well, but I also think that there are a lot of things that they are just not taught in school. And I'll refer to it as my spiritual mentor shared with me recently. It's called God's Natural Laws. And two thoughts that I want to share with you. One is there's a movie that I've been sharing and talking about that came out last November called Heal Documentary. Kelly Noonan-Glores is an absolutely beautiful woman who is behind the making of that movie, and she continues to have live events and promote the movie. It's a documentary that's available online at healdocumentary.com. You could rent it, you could buy it. But that movie, when it came out just last, I believe, in the fall, it actually helped elevate me and have a greater understanding of some techniques and some things that I could do to up my healing process. And that's just been absolutely beautiful. There are people like Kelly that are out here across the United States that have done their homework and continue to bring to the forefront the idea that there are other options and choices that we can consider to help our bodies heal. And so that's the first point I wanted to bring up. The second one, coming back to your story, Duane, is I asked you a question as I sat on my balcony in Sedona and asked you, Wayne, if there's one particular thing that you could say that saved your life, that allowed you to heal your mind, your body, and your soul from this diagnosis, was it the water? Was it the change of what the nutrition that you fueled your body with, which was 100% raw vegan, no sugars, no animal byproducts, from my understanding? I asked you if it was your lifestyle change. And your answer to me absolutely was profound. You remember what you said in that moment? It was just a couple of weeks ago.
I think I said something about it's my spirituality or something. It was my conscious connection with the divine.
Yeah, you said to me, I'm going to paraphrase you.
Okay.
Well, you know what? Why don't you just expand upon that? I don't need to paraphrase you because you're right here. What does that mean to you? Because if you did all those other things that you had control over, which was taking physical steps to fuel your whole body, yet you don't credit that with saving your life. You credit being a spiritual being. What does that really mean to you for those people that may not have spirituality in their life today, or may not have an understanding of what conscious contact with the divine or God means, or have no God in their life? How did God or the divine save your life?
That's a great question. And that was one of the reasons why I was a little reluctant to come on the show or to share my experience, because I understand what people would tend to perceive when I say certain things. Had I not have a firm grasp of my understanding of my connection with nature, I probably would not have chosen the route I did. What I did after, the practice of getting up every morning and doing the things that I needed to do on a daily basis, which, like you said, I put a tourniquet on anything that I understood my body didn't need. What I understood was my body needed a transfusion of sorts. But that understanding came from my connection with my conscious self and the divine. In other words, I just could not, reasonably cannot imagine being on this planet as a being imperfect as it is, and not having natural remedies for dis-ease. It just absolutely made no sense to me. And it was only my connection, at least in my opinion, it is my awakening connectiveness, my conscious connection with nature, with the creator, with the divine, that allowed me to understand that and comprehend it. So that's the route I took. Some others may take alternative holistic healing from an intellectual perspective. Well, you can do that, but you're probably not going to get the results that you would get if you seek to awaken a little bit more of your conscious connection with the divine. I'll give you an example. I try to live by 3 principles, and these if a person can understand these 3 principles, I mean, when I say understand, be honest about it, be authentic about it. If there's anything that you're doing in your life, even if you're thinking it, of harming the earth, its inhabitants, you're disconnected. You're disconnected from the world. You're disconnected from the essence of being human. If you cannot understand, do not plot to hurt the earth nor its inhabitants. If that is something that is difficult for you to comprehend, then perhaps you're not connected to divine. And if that's the case, that's fine. But it will be very difficult for you to practice the art of healing divinely or alternatively, other than what a man says that you need to be healed by. In other words, when you are connected spiritually, you don't need men to tell you what is in your own best interest. If you're still having men to tell you what is in your own best interest, you're still a slave somehow, somewhere in your psyche or in your consciousness. You're still being controlled, and therein lies frustration, because we were created not to be controlled. This is why I think you see people lose it sometimes. Because
at any time, Duane, through this process, how much work did you have to do to control your fear of being overtaken by the cancer and fear of dying? Was that a constant? Was that every day? Was that once in a while?
Never.
Or how did you work through that?
Never. Again, I was an ordained elder in a Christian faith, and I walked away from that in 2004. Now, in order to walk away from that, I had to reconcile what I had learned and been taught about my own personal mortality, the doctrine of salvation. So in other words, if you walked away from the church, you were hellbound. So if you divorced your wife, you're hellbound. If you do this, if you do that, you're hellbound. So I reconciled death a long time ago before I was diagnosed. So this diagnosis wasn't really, I didn't think about it as death. I saw it just like I saw those challenges back in 2004 when I left the church. When I separated from my wife and eventually got divorced. Those were serious challenges for me. So, and now that I've been able to address this challenge and have favorable results that I'm comfortable with, this is what I'm hoping to try to impart to individuals. And I've shared some with you, and I've seen you grow in the last 2 to 3 years in terms of your sense of self-worth, your sense of value, your own sense of power, the power for you to be able to make choices for yourself and not be controlled. I've seen it. And this is what I think the humanity is really about, growing up and taking responsibility, not only for their physical health, but for their spiritual health and their mental health. And stop relying on mere men to do this for you. You know, we need to break free from that and learn how to govern ourselves. We shouldn't have to have people telling grown people, behave, you know. And yes, we don't live in a perfect world, and yes, we're going to have conflict, but we have to learn how to deal with these conflicts without the severity of hurting one another as much as we do. But at first, it would start from being aware of stop hurting yourself. You know, stop eating the processed foods. You know, I didn't eat any processed food for 1.5 years, none. But again, now I'm going to piggyback on something that I've been thinking about. You know me, I'm a chef. I'm a chef by profession. And man, I'm really hoping to have an opportunity where people won't have to worry about what to eat in terms of healthy foods, you know. And I'm really hoping for an opportunity, because during my time when I was healing myself, I was experimenting with dishes, you know, alkaline dishes, healthy dishes. Yes, you have your vegan this and your vegan that, but, you know, I'm hoping to find an opportunity where I could be a little bit more practical with it, either cooking classes or find a small little bistro that I could feature my brand of healing food. You know, I think that there's room for people like yourself and myself and my mentor Alani Hudspeth. You know, it's room for people. There's room for a dialogue. Sit down at the table and start to explore alternative ways for healing, alternative ways for living. And yes, we've heard it all the time, you know, alternative lifestyle. However, if it's not really empowering you spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, it's not really empowering you.
Yeah. Sometimes it's okay to have a moment of pause so that we could take it in and really, you know, silence is uncomfortable for most people. And it used to be for me, but today it actually is good because it gives me a chance just to be. And you have shared so many profound words this evening. Your level of just wisdom that just oozes through the pores of your soul to the exterior is just absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to share with this community, for those of you that have joined us live, I thank you so much for supporting the show and contributing through your comments. I want to share a couple real quick. One is from Terry Zink, who says, we all have cancer every day, but if our immune system is strong, it takes care of it. So keep your immune system strong. If cancer gets out of hand, it's probably because you're eating too much sugar. Cancer has morphed into a form that uses sugar as food instead of oxygen like most healthy cells, so starve it. And without getting too much into the minutia of that statement, my sense is the choices you made for, I believe, for well over a year, how you fueled your body to rid your body of cancer was through the cleansing of your blood, as you described it. And that's just so many people, including myself. I haven't even been willing to make that level of commitment. I'm probably about 90% vegan. The 10% that I'm not is eggs and primarily wild caught fish like salmon and mackerel and herring. But I do believe that if I want to get to that level of healing that is that is like out there in the universe, for me to get to this next level, I'm probably going to have to be willing to make that level of commitment that you did. And my level of commitment is way better than what it was 2.5 years ago. But I think I'm really close to be willing to walk out on that plank and take that next step of courage to just do it. And I will also share that with our community is that for those of you that have tuned in and watched the show tonight, you've heard a lot of very beautiful statements and thoughts from Duane. And I've had the honor of learning from Duane just through his actions initially and his attitude, and most recently having had the opportunity to spend much more, I'd say, intimate time with him offline, just really diving in deep into philosophy, into spirituality, into all aspects of living, from emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual health. And what has transpired is the next level of our relationship was one that I recognized in the last 2 or 3 weeks, was that we are at another level in our relationship. And I realized that without having asked Duane, he has stepped into my life and has become my spiritual mentor. He was my healing mentor without him really knowing it, from a distance, living in St. Thomas. But today, Duane has stepped in, and I didn't know if I should just like let it naturally, organically unfold, or if I needed to like ask him out. Like, we've been dating, but I haven't formally asked him, like, will you be my girlfriend or boyfriend? In relationships, that's what we do. And sometimes, when we're young, we don't even have the courage to ask someone. So we ask our friend, will you ask them out for me? People do that in high school. I actually was talking to a gentleman recently who shared that with me. Actually, I think it was Chris Burns last week on a show that said his first girlfriend, he didn't even have the courage to ask her out. He had to have his friend ask her out for him. And so I've kind of been sitting on the sidelines, not knowing, like, what do I do with Duane? Our relationship has kind of expanded and grown. And finally, yesterday, I just had the courage to just put it out there and say, Duane, officially be my spiritual mentor. And he said yes.
I said yes.
Oh, what's that?
I said yes.
Yes, he said yes. And so I'm thrilled, because I need you to stay in my life. I need you to continue to be the part of the fuel that allows me to expand my consciousness, my understanding of what it is that I need to continue my healing process. And so I am just so excited that our journey will continue together. And I know we're just about out of time. We've gone over an hour, and I want to again thank you and thank those that have joined us tonight. If you didn't catch us live, that is okay, because we have the replay. Thank you for joining us on a replay. If you are on live or replay and you're in a space or place where you are so much struggling with a medical diagnosis or prognosis, or you have a loved one that you care about and you just want to get some additional perspective or have questions for Duane, Duane, I'm going to ask if you'd be willing to accept and receive any contact from anyone in the community, and how can they get hold of you?
Yeah, I'm willing to to assist in giving my experience and sharing my experience, share what I did, and just to give anybody some hope, and recognizing that you can make an alternative choice, and I think initially what we could do is they can go through you. You have my personal information. until, you know, if it gets to a place where, you know, we can do it directly or what have you. But I mean, for right now, if people want to go through you, that's fine. You know how to get in hold of me. We could probably set up, you know, some kind of communication that I can have an opportunity to respond. But, you know, like, again, I think I want to just really reiterate, for me, this is about fostering a quality of life for yourself, even in the throes of, you know, challenges and issues and trials and tribulation, and that we could, you know, we can have a good quality of life, even though we're having some trying times. So.
Any other parting words before we end the show this evening? Anything that you feel you'd like to share with the community of people out here that
Well,
may
I mean, I'm just happy for all who actually tuned in. Hopefully they got something out of it. I would not mind coming on again. Maybe we can be a little bit more specific. For me, it's really about how connected you are with nature, you know, yourself, to the point where you really understand how to heal your body, because that's important. I mean, the healing of the body is really a sum product of the benefit of connecting with yourself. You know, in other words, your body will follow. Your body will follow if you're spiritually conscious and your mind is strong enough to grasp and understand, comprehend, and execute the things that we know. And it's really yours. It's so personal, contrary to what anybody might say, because it's your life. And I think that if anybody that knows what's best, it's that person. But that person needs to get to know that themselves first, in order for that to be experienced on a deep level, or on a level where it becomes so tangible and meaningful for them. So, yeah.
So my takeaway, Duane, is that we have choices. We don't have to put all of our faith and trust into other people, doctors. They serve their purpose. They have been trained, and they're good at what they do, but they are not great at everything they do. And ultimately, what I heard you say, and what resonated with me 2.5 years ago, is that I can rely on Western medicine for my testing and for diagnosis. But as far as me relying on them to heal my body, that's not their job.
That's your responsibility.
That's my responsibility. And I took those words to heart, all pun intended. And I got real busy. I figured out what fueled me, what I needed to do to begin my healing process. And coming from someone who had no God ever in my life, I never had a God of any understanding. I was religiously bankrupt and spiritually bankrupt. And through the process of meeting you and starting on my journey of making a conscious decision that I wanted to live, I was not ready to die, that I needed to take this into my own hands and do everything possible to extend my life and heal. And it wasn't just healing my physical well-being. I was broken emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So I needed an extreme makeover. Every aspect of my life was pretty much gone. And I needed to go extreme. I needed to go as extreme as you did with your nutrition. And all I needed to do was, I think, 2 things. One was I had to be willing, and the second was I had to surrender. And once I surrendered and literally turned my life over to a power greater than myself, which to me is God or the divine, I began my healing process, as did you. And that's something that I have to practice every day. And I refer to it as my spiritual practice. So I start every morning the same way. I get up very early and I leave my home and I go out into nature, as you refer to it throughout the show tonight. And that's where I do my physical exercise and my spiritual exercise. I pray, I meditate, I ride my bicycle, or I walk, or I hike. And I also have music on in the background that just not like AC/DC or metal or hardcore music. It's just music that hits my soul, and it's a form of therapy that actually brings me that much closer to conscious contact. And by the time I'm done, whether it takes me an hour or it takes me 2 or 3 sometimes to reach that level of conscious contact, I feel as though my body has been levitating. I feel tingly throughout my body, and I am in a total state of tremendous gratitude for the day. And that is how I set my balance for the day. And then I start my day with people, places, and things. And by creating this spiritual practice that I do consistently every day with the same music, the same path, the same spiritual practice, allows me to continue to fuel my body, all of it, all 4 pillars, so that I can continue to heal. And I too have reversed diabetes. I too have reversed a high cholesterol levels that were through the roof over 400. And I've done all that. I am off of my statins for high cholesterol. I'm not on any medicine for diabetes. I've lost 58 pounds. I've built a new freeway flow of blood flow without the need of a bypass that is sitting in my body that they will not remove. I love my life today.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It takes work, and I still get affected by circumstances and things that unfold. But as long as I show up for myself, and I am 100% committed to healing and staying healed, then there is nothing greater that I need in my life. There's no external fuel that I need. I get it all by myself. And so those are my parting words, that we can achieve whatever we want to achieve. We just have to be willing. And through that willingness, the things will change. Things can only get better. Yeah,
I agree. I totally agree. One last thing I want to say. It's really challenging to do this and to keep your ego in check. Keeping your ego in check is paramount. Because what your ego tries to tend to do is to suggest to you that you have a better way than nature. And that you have all the answers that nature doesn't have. And, you know, when I have conversations with people, I could hear this. You know, I never approached my cancer as if I understood. No, never. Because I didn't know what I was dealing with. The only thing I understood was how my body was supposed to work. I keep saying it. I wasn't trying to figure out how many calories, you know, I wasn't trying to figure out, you know, measurement this and do this kind of quantity. I was not trying to understand none of that. What I understood was how my body's supposed to work. When I ingest something, what's supposed to happen when I ingest it? That's what I understood. Nature taught me that. So this is so critical when we're healing. We got to remove our ego. We got to remove what we think we know or what we've been taught. That's just all knowledge. It's knowledge but it's useless. It's just knowledge that really can't be applied because there's no wisdom. You know, you have to have wisdom in order for when you apply that knowledge, it can be beneficial to you. Because if you don't have that wisdom, that same arsenic that will save your life will poison you too if you're not understanding how to deal with it. So I try to listen to what nature is telling me versus what I'm supposed to think I know.
I love you, Duane. I thank you so much. You are the light behind my lightness today. You have taught me how to stop really thinking and start listening. Mm-hmm. Because the listening comes from within, mm-hmm. and that's where the wisdom is. And I would absolutely love to have you back on so that we can continue this conversation and see where we end up going with it. You know, You're a beautiful man, and I'm so grateful. Absolutely so grateful to have you in my life today.
I'm grateful to you, Jay, and Mary. Thank you, Mary. You know, you guys have been tremendous friends for a number of years now, and looking forward to, you know, whatever we collab with from here on in.
So I'm going to invite you. You're welcome to stay on. What's that?
Say namaste.
So namaste. You're welcome to jump off if you'd like, Duane. I'm going to just do a quick wrap up for less than a minute. But what I got is next week, we're going to go back on Friday night at 6 p.m. I've got a guest coming on. His name is John Fiore. And I met John through Spirituality Gone Wild. John is a gentleman who he's got a story to share. His story is a little different than Duane's and a little different than mine, but the end result is somewhat the same. He too had a catastrophic event happen to him. And he's had a battle back on so many levels. He had 2 strokes, and he's a guy that's in a holistic field. He's in a holistic business, and he's going to share a little bit about his background, his story, and what he's had to do to battle back from paralysis. And a matter of fact, it wasn't just a short month or 2 ago that he wasn't even willing to have a phone conversation with me. He wasn't ready to talk. And he finally reached out to me about 3 weeks ago when we had our first phone call rather than just through text. And it was such a blessing to be able to not a phone call, but we did a video chat through Messenger or FaceTime. I don't recall. It's not important. What was important is that he had the courage to show up and be vulnerable with me on the phone and have a conversation. And I invited John to come on to the show. I put it in my calendar and I confirmed it with him today that he's intending on being. It'll be next Friday night at 6 p.m. He's going to share his story of his near death and what it took for him to come back and be the man that he is today, and how his life has changed profoundly from his awakening of hitting his rock bottom. And John's going to be on. He's very active in a community of Spirituality Gone Wild. Whenever I pop on his shows, he seems to be there. He must have a lot of time right now as he's been recovering, battling back from not being able to walk, how to take steps, how to not be able to use one of his arms. I believe not being able to speak. But it's his story to share, and it's going to be exciting. And he's also from the East Coast. I believe he's from the state of Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania, the city of Philadelphia area. And so please come back next week, and we're going to keep this conversation. It's going to be real men, real talk, and we are going to be as raw as we can get. Have a beautiful weekend coming up. Enjoy whatever it is that you choose to do. Make sure you take time to do something for you. Take time to take care of yourself. Because what I learned is that no one's going to take care of you. You have to invest the time to take care of yourself. And till next time, peace out.
All right, please. Thank you.
We'll see you again.
All right.